I thought we were just having a lazy New Year's weekend. Turns out, my wife had scheduled a soft exit from our marriage. You ever wake up thinking it's going to be a regular Saturday, and by lunchtime, you're staring down the end of everything you thought was solid? That was me. 19 years of marriage, 2 daughters, a house just outside Denver, and I never saw it coming. That morning, I let myself sleep in a little. No alarms. No ruse. I rolled over and leaned in to kiss my wife on the cheek, something I'd done 1,000 times before. Ethan, she mumbled, let me sleep. I can't get a minute to myself lately. Not at night, not in the morning. And the girls are probably already up. I laughed softly. They're fine. They're old enough to make their own cereal by now. I slipped out of bed, pulled on my robe, and made my way toward the shower. As I passed by Olivia's room, I heard Chloe's voice rising. She was clearly trying to drag her sister out of bed. I smiled to myself and let them work it out. After my shower, I got dressed and headed to the kitchen. The girls were already at the table, looking like they'd been waiting for breakfast for a while. Dad, Olivia asked, are we actually eating today? We've got school, remember? I gave her a look. School? It's winter break. You're heading to Grandma's. Chloe looked surprised. Wait, you're not working today? Isn't a long weekend? It was your mom's idea. If I remember right, I said, half laughing. You two are old enough. Why not make your own breakfast? Chloe rolled her eyes. We tried. Mom shut that down fast. Said we'd ruin the pans or burn the house down. The only thing she lets us make is scrambled eggs. Well, I offered. What about some oatmeal? Or semolina, like they eat over in the UK? Olivia grinned. Oatmeal, please, kind sir. Oatmeal it is, I said with a smile. No lumps in the semolina, though. We'll save the oats for the horses. Go wash up, I added, already turning to the stove. Breakfast will be ready in 15. As I started prepping, Lauren finally emerged from the bedroom and slipped into the bathroom. A few minutes later, she walked back into the kitchen with her hair brushed and tied up, still wearing one of my old button-downs. She'd done that for years, especially on quiet mornings. And even now, I couldn't help but notice how good she looked. She always had a certain calm about her, effortless, like she never needed to try. But something had been off lately. Not explosive, not dramatic, just distant. It lived in the little silences, in the way she avoided my eyes, and how she always seemed one step out of reach. She sat down and looked at the girls. Finish up and get dressed. Dad will drive you to Grandma's. Olivia blinked. Wait, what? I thought we were going to Keystone for the week. You promised we'd go skiing. We packed everything. Lauren didn't even flinch. I know, girls, but things changed. We'll go skiing over spring break instead. Or maybe somewhere else. Mount Palmer has snow year-round. The disappointment in their faces hit me like a gut punch. They've been talking about this trip for weeks. I wasn't too thrilled either. Sending them to my mother-in-law's over the holiday weekend wasn't part of the original plan. But something told me this switch-up wasn't just about logistics. And that something had a name. Mark? Mark was Lauren's new boss, the commercial director at her company. I only heard about him after he was already hired, though apparently they went to college together. I got that gut feeling, you know the one, like there was history there, like something had reignited. I noticed how her tone changed when she said his name, how often she suddenly had after-hours work calls. I ignored it at first. Didn't want to seem paranoid. But when she pushed to send the girls away for the long weekend, my instincts told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to confront her empty-handed. I'd quietly prepped a small voice recorder the day before. I didn't want conflict, but I also wasn't walking into an ambush. Earlier that morning, while she was still asleep, I slipped into the bathroom, turned the recorder on, and tucked it into my pocket. She had no idea. So when we were back in the kitchen and she looked at me with that almost apologetic smile, the kind you give when you know something's about to change, I knew the conversation was coming. Ethan, she said softly, we need to talk. I nodded slowly. Okay, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, she said, voice shaky. I love you. You've been a great husband, an amazing father. I want to grow old with you, maybe even leave this world on the same day. I raised an eyebrow. Then what's the problem? She hesitated. I've just been thinking a lot, and I think we need a short break. Just some space. A couple of weeks apart. Time to think, to reflect, to grow. How long is a short break? Just 5 days, she said. Over the long weekend. I folded my arms. So that's why you're sending the girls to your mom's instead of taking them skiing? She nodded. Yeah, I already made the arrangements. Hier. So let me get this straight. You and your thoughtful new boss cooked up a brilliant little self-discovery retreat, and I'm just supposed to play along. Ethan, I don't know what you're trying to say. I leaned forward. You want me to believe this is about personal growth, but it's just a convenient excuse to get some space while you spend time with Mark. She looked hurt. There's no affair. You're imagining things. I let out a breath, keeping my voice steady. I love you, she added quickly. I know this is hard, but nothing's going to change between us. You'll see. When I come back, we'll be stronger. You might even thank me. But I wasn't listening anymore. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. You don't even know who I'm talking about, do you? I asked, staring her down. It's Mark, your new commercial director. Lauren flinched. You and Mark had something back in college, didn't you? He dumped you when he got bored, and you ran into my arms right after. Not a word from you about him becoming your boss. And now you expect me to believe this is just about personal growth? She stayed quiet for a second, then tried to play dumb. What do you mean by that? What do I mean? I repeated, my voice low but sharp. Everything's already changing. Your attitude toward me, toward the girls, it's all different. Lauren shook her head. Ethan, I love you. You're imagining things. Are you sure? I asked. Because it doesn't feel like imagination when my daughters are wondering where their mom went. Her voice softened, but her words only made things worse. I still love you. I do. But I don't know how you're going to explain a divorce to your parents. Or to Olivia and Chloe. What are you going to tell them? I stood there, pulse rising. We're not getting divorced? That's what you think. Lauren, I see through all this pseudo-scientific nonsense you and Mark cooked up. A temporary break? A 2-week break just to grow individually? Give me a break. You're overreacting, she insisted. You'll take the girls for the weekend, and once you're back, we'll talk. We can work it out. No, I said flatly. There's nothing to work out. I'm done. Her expression collapsed. You can't just do this to me. I can, and I will. I didn't plan for it, but I've made up my mind now. I told you I was going to call it off, she protested. You did. I nodded. Then you said we'd talk about it more when you got back. So go ahead, enjoy your free weekend. Spend it however you want. While I take care of the kids. Right then, Olivia peeked her head into the kitchen. Dad, we're ready to go. I'll be down in 5, I said, already heading upstairs to grab my things. I dressed quickly, threw my laptop and some essentials into my backpack, and walked out without another word to Lauren. I started the car and let it warm up while the girls hopped in the back. As we pulled away, I glanced at the window. Lauren stood behind the curtain, confused, watching us go. Silence filled the car. I could hear nothing but the tires rolling along the icy street. Then Olivia spoke. Dad, Grandma lives the other way. I know, sweetie, I said gently. But you were promised a ski trip, and that's where we're heading. We'll figure out where to stay once we get there. Dad, she paused. Are you and Mom getting a divorce? My hands tightened on the wheel. Why do you say that? We heard you arguing in the kitchen, she admitted. And we're with you. Right, Chloe? Chloe nodded from the back. Yeah, but where are we going to live? We'll figure out, I said. We'll stay at your aunt's for a bit if we need to. But let's not think about that now. Let's just enjoy the vacation. Back at the house, Lauren stood frozen at the window. After we drove off, she pulled out her phone and dialed Mark. He answered immediately. Mark, it's me, she said quietly. We've got a problem. Don't worry, I'm alone. What happened, he asked. He didn't react the way we expected. He didn't buy the whole separation thing. Who, your husband? Yes, she said, nerves creeping into her voice. He knows about our history. He's talking about divorce. Mark sighed. That's not good. Word could get out. Office gossip. And then Mia will find out. You're not planning to leave your wife, are you? I never said I was, Mark replied flatly. So what now? He took the girls somewhere, and I'm sure he'll come back. He's not just going to vanish. Then tell him the break is off, Mark instructed. Say it was a mistake. Try to calm him down. He needs to think this was a misunderstanding. Otherwise, it'll get messy and fast. I already told him that. He didn't believe me. Mark paused. How long until he's back? 3, maybe 4 hours, Lauren replied. Okay, that's our window, Mark said. Try to smooth things over. Make it sound like nothing happened. We don't need this spiraling out into work drama. Lauren hung up and exhaled. She looked around the house, suddenly too quiet, and realized she wasn't ready for what came next. She got dressed, went out to a nearby cafe, and picked up some takeout. On the way back, she grabbed a bottle of wine and set out 2 glasses on the table like nothing was wrong. She reheated the food, put on a movie, and curled up in the armchair, trying to pretend things were normal. But nothing felt normal. Her thoughts wandered. Was a brief, emotional reconnection with someone from her past really worth throwing everything away? She wasn't even sure how much Ethan had figured out. Maybe he didn't know everything. Maybe there was still time. She remembered how surprised she'd been when Mark showed up at her office months ago. Her old classmate turned director. There had been something magnetic in the way he re-entered her life. It had started with lunch. Harmless, or so she told herself. Then one day, Mark looked at her across the table and said, "Lauren, I've always admired you, but I can't risk wrecking my family. If this goes any further, it has to stay between us." That day, a door opened, and she walked through it, thinking she could close it just as easily later. Now she wasn't so sure. Back at the house, Lauren waited. Hours had gone by, 4 to be exact, and I still hadn't come back. Not a call, not a message. She figured I would have cooled off by now, maybe even returned home. But she underestimated something. She paced for a while, then called her mom. After a few rings, her mother picked up. "Hey, sweetheart. It's cold and already getting dark. Your dad's being stubborn again. What's going on?" Lauren asked. "Oh, same as always. He wanted a drink. I said no. He found the bottle anyway." Lauren forced a chuckle. "And how are you? When should we drop by with the girls?" That was the moment she realized I hadn't shown up. Her mom sounded completely unaware. Trying to stay calm, Lauren ended the call and immediately rang my folks. My dad answered. Retired Air Force. Sharp mind. No nonsense. "Lauren," he said sternly. "You looking for Ethan and the girls?" "Yes, sir. I just wanted to check how you're all doing." "Don't play dumb. He told us everything." She went quiet. "He said you asked for a 5-day separation," my dad continued. "He told us about that man from your office, Mark, and that you wanted a so-called break to find yourselves." "That's not what this is," Lauren stammered. "It was just a misunderstanding." "Was it?" My dad shot back. "Because to me, it sounds like you wanted your husband to hand over the keys while you did whatever you pleased." "Ethan's not a fool, Lauren, and he's not coming back." "But I said I was calling it off," she insisted. "He doesn't care anymore. Said he's had enough. He also told us the girls are with him, and that they're on his side. So whatever you were planning, it's done." Lauren's voice cracked. "There won't be a divorce." "That's your opinion," my father replied. "But I know my son. You clearly don't. You want another man? Then walk away. But don't tear down your family just to chase something that never should have been there in the first place." Before she could respond, he hung up. Panicked now, Lauren called Mark. But a woman answered. "Hello. I'm looking for Mark. This is Lauren. We work together." "Oh, I know exactly who you are," the woman replied coldly. "Don't bother calling again. He doesn't live here anymore, and he doesn't have this number anymore either." "What? Wait, what happened?" Lauren asked, stunned. "I've moved cities twice trying to stay ahead of that man. I'm done running." Lauren's voice trembled. "Do you know where he is?" "No idea. Maybe he's at your place," the woman snapped. "He knows your address, your schedule, probably even where you shop. You weren't the only one, by the way. He was lining up multiple coffee dates while I was out of town." The call ended. Lauren sat motionless, phone in her hand. Meanwhile, I was a few hours outside the city, driving with my girls toward the mountains. Our plan to visit Grandma had changed. I called up an old friend from college, John, who now ran a ski lodge up in Silver Ridge. He'd always said, "If you ever need a place to get away, you call me." So I did. "Ethan, I got 3 cabins open and one with your name on it," John said. "But I've got a favor to ask. If anyone calls, just tell them I'm not here." "Deal," I said. "We'll be there in an hour and a half. Roads are slick, so I'm taking it slow." By the time we reached the lodge gates, snow was falling steady. The guard recognized John's name and waved us through. I pulled the car into a covered parking area, and the girls helped me unload our gear. Inside, John greeted us with a grin. You always arrive right when dinner's getting cold. Let my girls wash up and settle in, I smiled. Then we'll eat. Chloe and Olivia found their room, changed into their sweats, and came back down with big smiles. They liked the place. It felt like a fresh start. John and I poured a couple drinks and toasted. To surviving the storm, I said. Which one? John joked. The snow or the woman? Both. Over dinner, Chloe asked. Mr. John, is there anything fun happening tonight? There's a dance party in the rec hall, he replied. No dress code. Come as you are. Chloe beamed. Really? Absolutely. I'll have one of my team walk you over, John offered. A few minutes later, a friendly young staff member came in and led the girls out. John turned to me. So, what really happened? I sighed. You remember Lauren, right? The one you married? Yeah. She reconnected with some guy from college. He ended up becoming her boss. They got close. You saying she cheated? Not physically. At least, not that I know of. But emotionally? Yeah. They planned a break over New Year's. Just long enough for her to go see what else was out there. I wasn't supposed to ask questions. Just accept it. John shook his head. Man, that's rough. I decided I'm not playing along. Told her I'm filing for divorce. He nodded. So what now? Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a few lawyers in town. I already called ahead. They'll come here to talk. After that, I'll figure it out. You're doing the right thing, John said. Let's toast again to the truth. Around 11 p.m., Olivia and Chloe came back from the party, still buzzing with excitement. One of John's staff had walked them to the cabin, and I could tell by their glowing faces that they'd had a great time. I threw together a quick late-night snack, and the three of us sat down at the table. We didn't talk about anything deep, just laughed, ate, and soaked in the warmth of the moment. After everything we'd been through, it finally felt like a real break from the chaos. Once the girls went to bed, the silence in the cabin settled in. I sat alone, staring at the flickering shadows from the fireplace. The day had drained me, but more than that, it clarified everything. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small recorder I'd used during that talk with Lauren. I listened again, not to torture myself, but to remind myself I hadn't imagined it. Her words, her tone, the way she avoided eye contact. It was all there. This wasn't miscommunication. It was a quiet, pre-planned exit, and I just happened to notice it in time. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't stop me when I packed the bags. She never even checked in. I wasn't part of her vision for the weekend. Or maybe not part of her vision at all. But I kept my promise to the girls. The ski trip happened because I said it would. And Lauren? She had no idea where we went. I made sure of that. Everything was planned with caution. Secure browsing, no digital traces. Just a clean break from me and my daughters. The next morning started with a knock on the door. Come in, I said, still groggy. The door flew open, and Olivia and Chloe rushed in with wide smiles. Dad, wake up. Let's go get breakfast and then hit the slopes. They got an ice rink, too. I chuckled, rubbing my eyes. That's so. All right. I'll be ready in 5. We headed to the cafe. It smelled like syrup, coffee, and fresh pastries. The girls devoured their breakfast, buzzing about skiing and skating. After we ate, we changed into our gear, rented skis, and rode the lift up the mountain. For those few hours, it was just the three of us. No drama, no stress, just a dad and his daughters carving through fresh snow under a clear sky. Later, we warmed up at the cafe again and ran into John and his wife, Amanda. She greeted the girls like they were family, and they instantly warmed up to her. John leaned over and said quietly, "The legal team just arrived. Anna, the one I told you about, is with them. You mind if we meet at your place?" "Of course," he nodded. "Amanda and her sister can take the girls to the ice rink later, if you're okay with that." "That would be great. They've been wanting to go back anyway." "Perfect. And hey, don't forget, tomorrow's New Year's Eve. Big celebration at the lodge." Later that day, John and I stepped into his small but well-equipped office. The legal team arrived right on time. Anna, the lead attorney, was calm, attentive, and professional. After I shared everything that had happened, she gave me her thoughts. First, she said, I wouldn't make any rushed decisions about the apartment. Your daughters may be young now, but they'll need space as they grow. If Lauren eventually moves on or brings someone else into the picture, it could complicate things. I get that, I nodded. But the thought of living under the same roof again, it's just not something I can handle. Understandable, Anna replied. In that case, you might want to consider a legal partition agreement. It gives everyone their space, and it sets a clear foundation for what comes next. I took a deep breath, letting that sink in. What I need to do first, just let her know, firmly but respectfully, that you're moving forward. I'll have the paperwork prepped and ready for you later tonight. Sounds like a plan. I really appreciate this. No rush, she said with a small smile. Even the courts need a break during the holidays. Before Anna left that day, she handed me her card and said, "You can always call my office if you need anything, or if you prefer, I can represent you directly." I like that second option, I told her. Let's do it. We spent New Year's Eve in the great hall of the ski lodge. Me, John, his wife Amanda, her sister, Anna, and the rest of her legal team. Other guests joined us too, and before long, the place was alive with music, laughter, and dancing. For the first time in weeks, I actually felt like myself again. For a few hours, I wasn't a man chasing the pieces of a broken marriage. I was just a father, a friend, and someone starting over. After midnight, I walked my girls back to the cabin. They were half asleep, leaning into my arms. I tucked them in, kissed them goodnight, and sat with them until their breathing softened. When I returned to the fireplace where John and a few others were still gathered, no one asked me anything. They didn't have to. We just sat in silence, enjoying the quiet crackle of the fire, until one by one we turned in for the night. The next few days were a gift. Skiing, hot chocolate, quiet walks through the snow, and more than one night of dancing at the rec hall. The girls laughed more than I'd seen in months. But there were also quiet moments. One evening, John asked, "How are you really holding up?" I didn't lie. "The days are good," I said. "But at night, I've cried more than I want to admit. Still, for the first time in a while, I feel ready for whatever's next." When it was time to pack up, I gathered the girls and sat them down. "I want you both to know," I said, "that no matter what happens between your mom and me, this place, this cabin, this trip, it was real. You deserved a vacation, and I'm glad we made it happen." They hugged me tight. We stopped at a shopping center on the way back to pick up a few groceries and school supplies. It was already dark when we got home. Without a word, Olivia and Chloe went straight to rearranging their rooms. Chloe decided to move her things into Olivia's room so that I could have the extra bedroom. Just as they were finishing up, Lauren walked in. "What are you two doing?" she asked, voice tight. "We're making space for Dad," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "We're sharing a room. He's staying in mine." "That's what Dad said," Olivia added, not looking up. Lauren didn't reply. She just stood there, watching. I headed to the kitchen and started making dinner for the girls and breakfast for the next morning. Lauren lingered nearby, clearly trying to start conversation. "I just want to say," she began, "whatever happens, I don't want strange men around our girls. If you're dating someone—" I cut her off. "Lauren," I said calmly, "you can go wherever you want, but I'm filing for divorce." She blinked like she hadn't expected me to say it so clearly. Later that night, I heard her knock on the girls' door. "Do either of you want to talk?" she asked gently. "We're fine," Olivia said flatly. "We're staying out of Dad's way like he asked." Lauren looked hurt, but I didn't step in. I'd already made peace with the reality of how things were now. That week, the girls and I kept to ourselves. We locked our rooms at night. I cooked for us and did our laundry. Lauren existed like a ghost in the house, present but no longer part of the family. Friday evening, a courier knocked on the door and handed Lauren a registered letter. It was from Anna, legal notice, and a copy of the divorce filing. Lauren came rushing into the kitchen with tears in her eyes. "Ethan, why are you doing this? I thought we were going to fix things." "You can speak to your lawyer about the details," I said, my tone neutral. "It's all there." She tried again. "Mark disappeared. I have no one now." "Then maybe you should reach out to him," I said, unmoved. "I'm serious." "I have nothing left," she whispered. The girls had finished eating and slipped quietly to their room without acknowledging her. That said more than any words could. Lauren followed me around the house that evening, pouring her heart out. She said she still loved me, that she loved the girls, that she made a mistake. I let her talk, but my mind was made up. Finally, I turned to her and said, What does love even mean anymore, Lauren? I did love you. Deeply. But that was before I realized how easy it was for you to lie to me. To plan some secret weekend with a man you never even told me existed. A man you once had feelings for. She tried to explain herself. You said you wanted to talk. So let's talk, I continued. Tell me about your so-called break. What was the plan? Was it supposed to be just dinner and reflection? Or something more? Because your little theory sounded rehearsed. Like something you two had discussed more than once. I picked up the dishes and started loading them in the dishwasher. From the corner of my eye, I saw Olivia appear quietly. Want help, Dad? Thanks, sweetheart. But you go ahead and tidy your room. I'll take care of the rest. Lauren stood nearby, completely shut out. She eventually turned and walked away to her room, tears in her eyes. Later that night, when I went to turn off the lights, I saw her sitting in the dark kitchen alone. She looked up as I entered. Ethan, she said, her voice soft. I didn't plan any of this. Mark and I had history, yes, from college. But he left, disappeared. I never expected to see him again. She told me it started innocently. Work meetings, lunches, shared memories. And then came the proposition from him. No suspicious meetings. No risks. Total discretion. I didn't want anything serious, she said. It was just something temporary, something I thought I could control. She looked at me, hoping for understanding. But I didn't say a word. So this temporary separation was just a cover for your first and only date with him? I asked, arms crossed. Lauren looked away, guilt all over her face. I didn't think it would go that far, she whispered. Mark convinced me it would help clear my head. I didn't realize that he was using you. I cut in. Come on, Lauren. You're smarter than that. She didn't respond. Was it really that easy for him? Just a few compliments about your hair and outfits, and suddenly everything we built was negotiable. Her voice cracked. It's not about that. It's been a while since you noticed me like that. And that justifies what you did. I said, trying hard to stay composed. You think being admired is enough reason to step out of your marriage? She didn't have an answer. I left the room. The next few days were heavy. Anna, my lawyer, had warned me that before the hearing, we'd be contacted by family services. Their opinion, she said, would hold weight in court, but so would the girls' voices. So I got ready, gathered documents, prepared emotionally, all while trying to keep things stable for Olivia and Chloe. I barely slept. My thoughts were split between heartbreak and strategy. Lauren tried a different approach then, one I had expected. For the kids' sake, maybe we should try and stay together, she told me one night. But I stood firm. No, our daughters deserve to see love that's honest and safe, not something held together by fear or guilt. I haven't poisoned them against you. Everything they feel, they figured it out on their own. She was quiet, then finally asked the question I knew had been burning in her mind. Do they hate me? I sighed. I don't know if it's hate, Lauren, but they're disappointed, and that hurts more. You always talked about sociology, I added, but for someone with a degree in human behavior, you really missed how deep trust goes with kids. They're old enough to form their own views, and you gave them every reason to do just that. I saw it clearly now, how our daughters, with very few words, had processed what happened better than we had. Their silence spoke volumes. Their actions were deliberate. They'd chosen which parent they trusted. That night, I finalized my proposal with Anna. Custody of the girls would remain with me. Simple, clear. But Lauren didn't take it well. I'm not signing anything, she said flatly. Then we'll take it to court, I told her. They'll talk to the girls. Review the report from the child services team. It's out of our hands. You're awfully confident, she replied. I don't need to be, I said. Truth stands on its own. Then came her plea, one I had already prepared myself for. Ethan, I know I made a terrible mistake. I've seen how badly I messed up. Please believe me. I love you. I'll never speak to Mark again. Is that supposed to fix this? I asked. So what? Now you'll just find someone else next time things get quiet at home. She went silent. I'm not blaming you for falling out of love, I said. But don't stand here trying to convince me this wasn't your choice. I walked away. If you change your mind about signing, do it through the lawyer. And make sure it's notarized. When the reconciliation period mandated by the court expired, Lauren tried one last time to reconnect with the girls. She waited for them after school. She asked to sit down and talk, but they weren't interested. They came home, put their backpacks down, and joined me in the kitchen for a quick snack before doing homework in my room. Our room now. That week, child welfare officials made their scheduled visit. They talked to the girls, looked around their space, and took notes. No drama, just facts. The hearing date arrived. I walked into the courtroom with Anna by my side. Lauren arrived alone. No attorney, just a manila folder and a nervous expression. I learned later she had consulted with a counselor and a few divorce friends. She knew what was coming. The judge asked a few standard questions. Lauren responded with quiet yes and no answers. When it came time to talk about the apartment, she stunned us all. "I'm giving up my share," she said. "It belongs to the girls. I've already drawn up a deed of gift." The judge took note. She had already moved her things out. Whatever was left, she'd collect within a week. Before we adjourned, Lauren asked for a brief recess. After returning, she addressed the court again. "I'm willing to pay child support voluntarily," she said. It was the first time in weeks she had spoken with real clarity. But for me, the clarity had come long before.